Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, poisonous reptiles, and amphibians alike. I am your host, Sir Grimtales, and today we will be continuing on our journey through the creepy tales of Reddit to kick off your 2023. Just chilling, singing a tune, swinging a knife. So this happened somewhere in the 2000s, when I lived at home. I lived in the corner two-story house of an estate, an area of semi-detached houses, and had the back bedroom that looked out into our back garden. We had a side gate to the garden that was always locked, and we had a high wall around the garden itself, which could only really be accessed from the outside if a mate gave you a bump up, or on an electricity box that was about 1 foot away from the wall near the road. Anyways, one night I am awoken about 3 a.m. and can hear someone gently singing, speaking and laughing, as though they are directing this to someone. I assumed this was my neighbor, who maybe had a friend over for drinks or something. I think nothing much of it and drift back into a light sleep. I continue to hear this singing and soft speaking voice, and I begin to realize it's been approximately 45 minutes, and I haven't heard a single response from another voice. I think perhaps someone is out on the street high, drunk or something of the sort. Being a nosy teen, I get up to peek out. I can't see anyone under the streetlight or in my neighbor's garden, and then I look straight down into my own garden. There is a man laying in my garden, perched up on one arm and swinging a butcher knife around in his other hand, while my dogs, spaniels, roll around him and look delighted with life. He's singing to either himself or my dogs. I run into my parents' room, and they come to see what I've woken them for. My dad, who's generally a quiet man, goes straight into action mode and grabs his shotgun and torch. This is Northern Europe. He used to hunt pheasants and foxes, and runs straight down the stairs. He opens the backsliding door, points the torch and gun at this guy, and yells in a manly voice, "Get out of here before I blow your blasted head off." The man jumps to his feet, but quite gracefully, smiles and bows before jumping up onto our shed and hopping over the wall. We reported it, but never heard anything. Also, not sure why my dogs didn't bark at him. They would usually bark at anyone they don't know. But regardless, singing weirdo. Let's not meet again. Roadtrip Story. I was on a cross-country road trip with a colleague. We were driving through West Texas on a major highway. In the area where we were, even the major highway was pretty desolate. There had been a truck stop or gas station about every 100 miles, and every one of them was solitary, with no other buildings in sight. These weren't really towns, the exits, just places to get more gas, to get to the next gas station. It was pretty late at night, and my colleague had been driving for nearly 4 hours. Usually, I can drive at about 8 before I'm tired out. I go on frequent road trips, but she could only manage 4 or 5 before it was my turn again. We were also getting low on gas at about a quarter of a tank, and you learn from road travel to fill up when you get the chance. So she was looking for a gas station as we drove along. It's really corny, but we were talking about fate and destiny, and some other weird things at the time. That kind of conversation gets me keyed up and worried, so I was trying to change the subject. She took an exit while we were talking, and I got out my coffee mug so I could fill up for my turn driving. We pulled into a typical Nowhereville gas station, just a station and a trailer out back. I assume, thinking back, it was probably where the people who owned it lived. There was another car parked in front of the doors off to one side. We got out, still talking, and walked up to the double doors, each of us grabbing a door handle. The doors were locked. I turned and looked around to see if there was a sign. Sometimes places will put up a back in 5 minutes, and noticed several things in succession. The coffee maker inside was halfway done brewing a fresh pot of coffee. The monitors that showed the store were visible from outside, where we were, but all of them were showing static. And there was a splash of bright red on the door in the back of the place, which was closed. I suddenly realized I was looking at a huge streak of blood, with handprints in it. Every hair on my neck stood up. My friend began shaking the door, yelling, "We need to get gas," but I had already turned and walked away from the doors. "We need to leave now." I grabbed her arm and started propelling her back to the car. Now I noticed the other car in the lot. It had no plates. It was dingy and had dents. There was an empty gun rack in the window of it. I ran to the car, dragging her with me. She seemed to take forever to open her door and get in. She had the keys still. The whole time she kept saying, "But we need gas." While I tried to explain to her, "There's blood in there. Blood." After what seemed like a year, she pulled the car out. As we were backing up, I saw through the windows that the back door in the gas station was opening. We had pulled away before anyone came out, thankfully. I freaked out until we were 20 miles down the highway. I tried to call the police, but had no signal. I did not get a phone signal until we had driven about 40 miles and gotten to a truck stop. Again, not in a town, just a building on its own in the middle of nothingness. I called the cops. They thanked me, and I never heard anything more about it. To this day, I feel like if I hadn't freaked out, we probably would have met the robber, or whoever was in the back room of the place. I also wish I had been able to find out what had happened there. It was a Chevron station, somewhere in the western part of Texas, at least within about 100 miles or so of the signs for those places on Route 10. I only have a few stories that fit this subreddit. This is the mildest one.